James Falloway, United States Army, Vietnam. I interviewed James in Owensboro, Kentucky. It was May 28th, Memorial Day weekend 2006. I had spoken at Owensboro at one of their annual Memorial Day events and met James and a bunch of other veterans, and his story is one of my Vietnam stories, so I'm happy to share it with you today. James went into the military at 18, 19 years old, was in Vietnam in March of 68, into 69. And he served with the 178th Assault Support Helicopter Company, which was a part of the 1st Aviation Division attached to the Americal Division in Chu Lai. And he fought as a door gunner, a crew chief, and a flight engineer. And this has a real diverse story in Vietnam, and really laid back guy. I hope he's still with us today. Haven't checked up on James in a while, but I'm happy to share his story today. I want to thank David Penn for stepping forward. David has sponsored some of my stories, like some of you have, and I'm happy, David. Thank you. This is your story that you chose, and God bless you. Thank you for supporting my work and our veterans in this country, David, and to you and all those who support my work. Just a great big thank you. I know God will bless you for it, so happy to work with you. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story like David, there's information in the video description below the video. On my website, larrycapetto.com, there's a link that says Sponsor a Vet. If you click on it, you see a page of a lot of my veterans, not all of them, but you'll see pictures of some of them. If you find one you like, just include their name in the sponsorship and I'll do the rest. If you'd like to support my work through a donation, there's information in the comment section of this video. You can click on that link, and I would greatly encourage you to do so, and your help will be much appreciated. Voices of History Radio is still on the air, thank God. It's over somewhere in I think we're in our 7th month. Tuned in to over 40 countries across the world, and I love it. I've been listening to it all weekend. It just comforts me, something about it. And I was listening to Gene Kelm's story from Texas in 2010. Gene was in Graves registration. And I have to say, Gene's story is probably the best story I've ever recorded. What he did, identifying the bodies that were killed in Vietnam, and how much grace and honor they put in that. It's just very moving, folks. So I think I just chose my #1 all-time story. So if you go and type in Gene, G-E-N-E, Kelm, K-E-L-M, you'll find my story with him. So, okay, that's it for now. Thank you for watching this video, subscribing to this channel, and sharing these videos, folks. We just surpassed 50,000 subscribers, which isn't a lot in the whole, but for me it's a lot. So I'm grateful for all of you if you're still out there, and thank you for tuning in and supporting my work. So God bless you. I hope you enjoyed James' story. You know, it's amazing. As we start to talk, you're probably going to remember things maybe you haven't thought of for a while. But now you're in Vietnam.
Right.
What year were you over there?
I got in Vietnam March 68.
Okay. How old were you then?
I was 19.
Were you in the Army?
Army Aviation. Right.
Give me your unit, company,
okay.
And all this stuff.
Okay, I was in the 178th Assault Support Helicopter Company. It was part of the 1st Aviation Division attached to Americal Division based at Chu Lai.
Okay, what was your rank at that time?
When I got there, I was an E4.
Okay, which is a corporal, sergeant?
I'd say it's probably a corporal,
okay.
Equal.
Okay, and your specific job was?
When I arrived there, my specific job was truck driving. Basically, is all I done. Just drove a 2.5 ton truck, and I worked basically resupply like the mess hall. They had what you call KPs, which were Vietnamese nationals, which you would have to take them home at night to take them off the base and then go back and pick them up in the mornings. And I'd done that for, I guess, about 7 months.
What was it like when you first got to Vietnam? I mean, what was the country like? What do you remember about your first experience in Vietnam?
The first thing was when I walked off the plane, it was like you're in an air-conditioned plane that's 110 degrees on tarmac. And from that point on, like I said, I was in country for about close to 2 weeks before I ever got to July. What it was, they were, you know, when you get there, they got like a distribution point, who goes where, where they need you according to your MOS, different things like that. And so I was flown and convoyed from one end of the country to the other, one Da Nang, and then I'd be back to Bien Hoa. And then at one point, I was in Saigon. From Saigon, I took a convoy up to Bien Hoa, you know, and then from Bien Hoa, I went to Chulai.
Did you see combat while you were there personally?
On the ground, other than what I had to deal with when I was on guard duty, basically on the perimeter, which our perimeter was basically the beach. But we were the last unit on the beach, other than we had a couple of small, like the LERPs, which was, you know, like a Green Beret company sitting there. But other than that, we had to man that perimeter. As when I got into door gunning, when I started flying, then the door gunners basically pulled guard duty on the perimeters.
Tell me about the job of a door gunner, and just take me on a mission into an LZ. I mean, whether you did that or a door gunner, just give me some information about that. Okay,
basically, you were in the flight platoon and you were assigned a ship every day. You didn't know what ship you were going to fly on unless someone specifically requested you. In the mornings, and it didn't start at 6 a.m., it started anywhere from the time they called you, whether it was 12 o'clock midnight or 3 o'clock in the morning. They'd tell you got a mission, you got to get up, get down to the field. So we go down, go in, take our guns out, which, you know, every day when you put them in there, you got them all cleaned, they're ready. So you just go back up, pick your guns, go back out, mount them on the ships, get your ammo. If you didn't have it, just get everything that you need, your sidearms or your, just whatever you carried, your personal weapon also. And then they would tell you your mission. They would tell you whether you're going on a CA or combat assault, or you're just flying what they call shorties, resupply. And some of them were like a 30-minute trip, 30-minute turnaround, 30 minutes out, 30 minutes out. Some of them were hour and a half, basically, 45 minutes each way. Sometimes you wouldn't even come back to base. For some missions were 12 hours long. In a day, you would go out. It was, there was no 2 days as the same. I loved it that way because every day was different. You never knew where you were going and what you were going to do. Some days, you know, just about every day you were shot at, whether you were hit or not, I don't know. And it's just according on where your mission was. There were some zones that were hotter than others. Now, if you went in on a combat assault, it was about a 99% chance you were going to get shot at, or shot and hit. But a typical day was, like I said, on an average day, you'd fly 6 to 8 hours. You would never come back to home base, so you always had different places that you'd refuel. You'd go up to a Pacific area, and they'd have trucks there for what you done was you supplied fuel, water, ammo, food to the LZs. So they would have a specific point where you'd pick it up and you'd operate out of that area all day long unless they called you and changed the mission. But
was there a particular sortie or mission that you flew that was more memorable to you as far as combat? Or I mean, you hear stories about Vietnam, you see movies. I mean, it's you know, the wounded being evacuated, you know, the enemy shooting, the Huey being hit. What was maybe one of the toughest missions you were on that you remember that maybe some of that might have happened?
We had a mission at night one time. It was we would come back. We'd been taking sorties out all day, and we were flying back to Chulai. And we just sat down, was taxiing in to shut down, and we were the last one in, and we just refueled. So they told us that they had a mission on a fire base, which the LZs were named odd names. Some of them were named after people, and some were named, there was one particular one was called LZ West, which was pretty close to the Laotian border. And so they needed ammo. They were being assaulted, you know, they had a battle going on basically, and they needed resupply of ammo, just everything. So we did a turnaround, flew back out, and you didn't have a flight plan or nothing like that. Everybody flew by sight. When you see, and at nighttime, it was just your lights that kept someone else, another aircraft, from hitting you. You kind of showed the enemy where you was at, but you had to run them. But on missions like that, and that particular time, it was raining pretty good. It was during the monsoons, and so we just flew back out at low level, basically 50 to 100 feet off the ground, and we're not really going to run into any other aircraft. Basically, they're not going to be flying unless they've got a mission also. We were the only ship sent back out that night, and we basically flew that way. Then we down Highway 1 till we got to the Ashall Valley, and then we just topped out at about 3,000 feet, flew back to the LZ, which is probably about a 30-minute flight from Highway 1, which is the main highway from, just basically that's the only highway there was from north to south. But then when we get closer to where we figured, you know, we can go by sight of the ground basically, even at nighttime, because you know where your mountains are and all this. And we dropped down to where we stayed that high to keep them getting shot at because of our lights. I mean, we could get shot at that high, but we'd have more of a chance of getting hit on the ground closer. So right before we got to the mountaintop, or the LZ, we dropped down to ground level again and just walked our way up the side of the mountain with our lights. And they were getting hit at the time with mortars and rockets and small arms. And when we come up on the top of the LZ, I mean, you know, it was like everything just lit up, and they were dropping mortars in. Basically, I could see them exploding. I was laying on the hoe. The hoe is where your hook is, and that's where you tell your pilot, maneuver him around to drop a load or pick it up. So I had to tell him where, you know, he was at as far as hitting anything. And so he points the lights backwards where you can see the ground. You drop it where they want their loads, as close to the guns as they can get them, where they can get to the ammo. And that was kind of hairy that night because there was mortars. I could see the flashes and things going off. And as soon as I punched off, I said, "We're clear, let's go." So we was out of there.
Now, you were a door gunner?
Right. Now, see, I was a door gunner, but at that time, I OJT'd into a job as a crew chief. And I went from a crew chief to a flight engineer. And so at that time, I was a flight engineer when we went into that base that night.
Well, what is the job of a door gunner? What kind of machine gun is he firing, and what? Tell me why he would fire it and who and all that.
Okay, the majority of the time, our guns were on safety, because on a regular sortie or on a day's run, we would be at 2,000 to 3,000 feet, and you used a 60 caliber machine gun. There was 2 mounted on the Chinook, one on each side. You had a 200 round canister that was hooked to the side of the machine gun. Now, if you was on a combat, what they call a combat assault, then you would have what they call a stinger. They would let the ramp down on the helicopter and mount a machine gun back there at 60. And basically, you had 3 gunners on there. Then what it is, you had one gunner which was responsible for the machine guns, making sure they was clean, making sure that they was all operated, and had ammo for them. Then the crew chief manned the other door as a door gunner also. He done 2 jobs. Like when we shut down for a fuel check or a maintenance check, the crew chief and the flight engineer would take care of the maintenance, check everything over before we go back to flight. The gunner would check the guns over, make sure there's still ammo for each gun, stuff like that. So like I said, the crew chief's job was basically a gunner's job too, but he was also maintenance.
Okay. Now, did you fly with the Chinooks and the Hueys, or just the Chinooks?
No, I never did fly on the Chinooks other than just to be picked up, taken from one city or from one base to another.
How about the Hueys? Did you fly with the Huey helicopters at all?
No,
okay.
I didn't.
Okay.
Now, on a combat assault, they had all those. You had the Hueys, which would carry troops, and you had C model gunships and the Cobra ships, which would go in with you on a combat assault.
Okay.
They all flew together.
Okay. Why were we in Vietnam? I mean, at that time of our history, people thought, well, we don't know what we're fighting for. I mean, did you feel that, or did you feel a lot of pride about what you're doing over there, or what were your thoughts?
I felt it was my duty. I was in the service for probably less than 18 months. I joined the service, and I volunteered to go to Vietnam. I was in Germany, and I would have stayed there for the rest of my tour. And I decided if I'm going to be in here, then I'm going to be doing something that I feel is worthwhile. And I felt that we was there to keep the spread of communists from spreading any further than it did. They can talk politics about whether it was good or whether it was bad, but the way I feel about it was I done what I thought was right. And to prove that communists, basically they wanted to take over another part of the country, make it communist. It wasn't like once the war was over, all the South Vietnamese were their friends, because they killed a lot of them after they got there. And they were of the same nationality. So I think I saved a few people's lives in doing that, or trying to stop the spread of communism.
You hear a lot of things about Vietnam. One of them is drug usage. Was that around, and why was that prevalent if it was? I mean,
well, I'd say specifically marijuana, probably it just grows wild. It grows wild. It grew wild in Kentucky, I guess you could say. They made hemp out of it, rope. But I've seen a lot of people use it. As far as other drugs, I've seen people do that too. And I mean, it's, to the extreme where I wouldn't depend on them for anything. But the majority of the people that I knew never done it to the point where it affected their jobs. Everyone that I flew with, you had to be serious about your job. For one thing, if a gunner didn't do his job, the flight engineer or crew chief didn't do their job, then the maintenance one kept up, then somebody could get hurt very easy. So for anyone in a flight platoon to do something like that, to use drugs, not saying I'm a person that never indulged in something like that, because I probably did.
You just don't remember, because...
I mean, no, I did. But I'm just saying that once, it's different to the point where if I'm endangering somebody else's life in my life, that it just didn't go together. And so that's something that I left out of.
Have you ever seen a movie that portrayed Vietnam like it was? I mean, is there anything that you've seen?
I've seen some movies that come close.
Which one?
What was the last one? The one about
We Were Soldiers?
we Were Soldiers.
Mel
I thought it was
Gibson.
pretty good. Mel Gibson. It was pretty close. You get extremes on anything, and I would say there was. You take people, you can't take personality out of people, and some people are just downright mean, whether they're what nationality they are. And I'd say there was Vietnamese, North Vietnamese that done things that were really vicious, and I would say there was Americans that did the same thing. But as a group, I would say not. I mean, some people are just that way, and whether they're here living in this city or if they're in a combat zone, they figure they're free to do whatever the meanness they want to do. But some of the movies portray them a little more vicious than they should be. I think the movie John Wayne had when he came out with the Green Beret, that was pretty good. But to say a run-of-the-mill day on an LZ, everything I ever understood and everything I seen, I met these people and they met us. You know, they appreciated us just like we appreciated the job they were doing. And they worked out of a LZ just like we worked out of a home base, Chulai. At night, we would fly back in basically to a safe zone. We did get rocketed, we did get mortared. You know, there were people killed in my company by those things happening at night while they were asleep or trying to sleep. But they were out in the field and they stayed there constantly. And it wasn't only were they at the LZ and they were vulnerable from enemy fire at any time, they also had to pull patrols where they would have to go from that safe zone to even get to more dangers. So I kind of looked up to the guys and we done as much as we could for them. I mean, you know, we would fly beer into them, you know, just whatever, to help them the best we could. And we appreciated the job they were doing.
When you see some of these movies and they're listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival and they're going in, you know, it's all, you know, I had one guy say it was like that, but they listened to the Doors and all this stuff. I thought, well, but anyways, you know, the music really brings it back. Are there sights and sounds today that bring back memories of Vietnam?
Oh yeah, that's
Tell
a
me
lot of
something
things.
that happens in civilian life that.
I've smelt basically someone that's dead. I mean, basically, you know, someone that has died. And that's a smell that comes back frequently. You know, if you run up on something like that, whether it's a dead animal or a person or what, and it kind of like, I've smelt that before. And you talk about songs the same way, you know, it's just, probably couldn't name a specific song, but you're talking about Creedence Clearwater. Yeah, some of those songs. Did we blast music like that? I don't know if anyone else did, but our company never did. But we had what they call ADF, which was Armed Forces Radio, and we would listen to that at times. But when we went, you know, like if you're flying, like I told you, some missions take longer than others to get to your point, and we'd have radio on. But before we went into the LZ, we would shut them down so we could hear each other talk to make sure there was no mistakes. But yeah, there's sounds and different things that brings it back, makes you think.
Hey, David, you mentioned the smell of a dead body and stuff. Did you work with the wounded at all, or did you have, hold on a second, did you do any medevacs, or were you involved with getting the wounded out, or tell me what you experienced over there with that?
Well, sometimes if we dropped into, like some of the places where we'd operate out of, picking up shorties to take out, now we would sit down there for lunch or whatever, or we'd go in there for a refuel or something, and somebody come out and say, hey, we've been waiting for someone to pick up. Most of the time it would be American bodies, and they'd have them in plastic. And they would say, we need them to be taken back to Chulai or just wherever. And so we'd pick them up and take them back. But when I talk about the smell of bodies, is basically on these LZs, we'd go in the mornings to take in, like on shorties or whatever, and they'd had a firefight that night or something like that. And they would have dead Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, and they would just put them in a cargo net. We'd pick them up, and they'd tell us that, well, you know, somewhere along the line they took a bulldozer somewhere and dug a hole, and we'd take them and drop them in it. And you had to lay in a hole to, you know, like I said, direct the pilots. And sometimes I'd have to just get him to back off, get my breath, and we'd go back in and hook up and go again. But some of them, you know, you take the temperature that you had there, and sometimes it was 2 or 3 days. They'd be laying there and they'd just gather them up and you'd have to go pick them up.
How old are you now?
I'll be 58 in July.
And what year were you in Vietnam again?
I was there from March of '68 till July of '70.
So you were what, 20 years old when you were there?
I was 19, I was 21 when I left there.
Mm-hmm. And were you prepared for Vietnam? I mean, the training was sufficient for what you had to experience? Was there a lot of anxiety or anticipation of Vietnam? Or was it what you thought it was going to be when you got there? Or?
Basically, no, I don't think, because, I mean, you're young then, and it's just like kids today. We think we're going to live forever. Nothing's going to hurt me. But I don't know, I said in 1966, I made a statement to some friends of mine that I was going to go to Vietnam. And I didn't do it because I told someone I was going to, but I did. And it did, once I got there, I would say I grew up fast. And for instance, I can tell you a story about another person that flew on the helicopter with me when I was a flight engineer. He was, when he got there, he was 19, and I was 20. And I basically extended to stay there another 6 months, even though I'd already been there for 2 years. And they had turned me down. They said I had to, you know, come home. But this other person was a crew chief, and I was training him to be the flight engineer on that helicopter. And to me, he was a kid, and I was 2 years older than he was, or whatever. But it just seemed like it made you grow up fast. What you see, what you hear, just different things. And the thing about that was, he was 19 and just turned 19. And he'd been in the service long enough to just go to basic training, go to maintenance school, and then he was shipped to Vietnam. So I was training him to be the flight engineer on the aircraft. And so I got orders to leave in July. And the ship was shot down in August, and he died. And I often wondered, you know, how that worked, but it's just life. It just wasn't meant to be.
Have you ever been back to Washington at the wall there, the Vietnam Memorial?
I had a chance to go there about 2 years ago. My son works there, and so it was his birthday, so we...
Tell me about going there and what you felt, what you experienced.
Well, at first when I walked up, you know, it was like, I've seen the one, they brought it here a few years ago. I helped them set it up. And I had, you know, it really brings back a lot of stuff because you read names of people that you know. And then the one in Washington, D.C. was really something. I mean, you know, to walk around and see what people leave to remember a person by. It was really awesome to see that. And the thing that I think this country now, really, they appreciate people that serve in the armed forces. I really do, because I know what they're going through. I mean, it's something that they can be proud of for the rest of their life, I'd say.
Did you find this young man's name that you just told me about that crashed in August of that year?
Yes, I found his name on it. I've traced it on the board and wrote him a little note and left a I got a picture of him in there, and left it there with him.
Well, you know, in that movie We Were Soldiers, if you remember, the way they portrayed the women took the telegrams to these other wives.
Right.
You know? I mean, I'm assuming it was fairly accurate as far as that was at Fort Benning, I think. But I kind of wonder with the World War II guys and even with Vietnam, how families were notified of a loved one killed. I mean, did they send them a telegram? Probably back then, they probably did. Or do you know?
I'm not sure. I never heard. I often wanted to, because I had a picture of this. Well, his last name was York, Joe. Anyway, here in the last, I guess, 5 years, I found out where his family lived at. I often wanted to talk to him, but you know, it's like, and how they notified him, whether they sent him a telegram. To me, that would be a telephone call or a telegram wouldn't be the right way to notify someone, something like that, because I mean, you know, it's like one day you got a letter from them, the next day they're saying, well, he's dead.
Yeah. What do you think about Vietnam today? Does it mean anything to you, the war that you fought there? I mean, have any significance in your life anymore? Or?
Well, I don't think Vietnam, South Vietnam is better now. I think they still had the same problems as they had when it was North and when it was South. Like I said, there's probably people alive today because we were there, and there's probably people that are dead today because we were there. Should we have stayed out there? I don't know. You know, it's just like when the United States had a civil war. I don't know that there wasn't people backing both sides of that. If it was just between the North and South, or if someone else was influencing that. But Vietnam today, I'd say there's thriving. I mean, you know, they're probably, the cities have probably grown. Some cities probably don't exist anymore.
But what does Vietnam mean to you, just as a veteran? I mean, do you think about the war? Do you think, I mean, what are your thoughts today? I mean, looking back, for almost 40 years now. I mean,
Yeah.
do you feel like it has a part in your life anymore that you were there, or society today, or how do you feel about that? Are you proud that you served in Vietnam?
Oh yes, I'm proud. I'm proud that I done that. Yes, I mean, you know, I know why I went there for, as far as my own personal reasons, and I don't think I done anything that was out of the way. I done my job, and my job wasn't to go and kill people. It was basically to save people, and I think I done that. As far as the country today, I'd love to go there. I'd like to see just how it is. See if it's calmed down to the point where people aren't killed every day just because of maybe the way their religious reasons or whatever, or the political reasons.
Tell me about coming home from Vietnam. Did you have a homecoming, or were some bad things happening when you guys came home? Tell me where you were when you came home and what happened.
Well, from the stories you got, you basically, I was home and there. After you're there for 11 months, you can extend and you come home for 30 days, you go back, and I was doing that often. And so I would come, but as far as everything was going, the protests and different things like that, it did make you not want to wear your uniform in public because of being ridiculed, or, you know, people saying things to you. So you wanted to avoid that so you didn't have to get into that conflict or that confrontation with people. But as far as someone ask you, and I mean, I wouldn't deny it, but I just change into civilian clothes, jump on a plane, come home. But the way I looked at it is, each individual had to make their own mind up what they thought about that war and how they felt about it. And I couldn't criticize them, and I don't think they should have criticized me for what I done.
I've heard some horror stories about guys coming home.
Yeah.
Just things you can't hardly even repeat, it's amazing. But has anybody ever thanked you for your service in Vietnam?
Yes, I have. For one thing, my 2 sons, they thank me every time they get a chance. My whole family, basically, they supported me all the way. They've always been with me on whatever I decided to do. And basically, the times I was home, sometimes they'd have, I know that we've had family reunions, different things like that, and they'd, like at times it'd be my birthday or something like that. And I'm talking, I have quite a bit of family that live here. It's a big family, so.
Well, you seem pretty of sound mind. Why were some of the Vietnam vets so messed up when they came back, and they are today even?
True.
What happened?
I don't know. I had a different attitude about it, and I tell people all the time, it's like it was an adventure. It was an adventure that, I mean, how many people can say that every day in a year's time, let alone the time I was there was no 2 days ever alike. You learned something every day. You see something new every day. Sometimes you may not want to see, but sometimes you did. And, I mean, it was just an adventure to me. I mean, not the fact of seeing people die, but just the fact that you were doing something that you felt was right and helping someone and knowing you didn't know what was going to happen today. And it's like I said before, we were no different. We were young and we felt that we was going to live forever. But once you got there and you seen that people your age were dying every day, it gave you a realization of what it was. But still, it was just different every day. Every day. You didn't get up the same time. You didn't go to bed the same time. And you may not sleep all night one night, and you may the next. But
have you heard stories about what I referred to, Vietnam vets that are just messed up? You hear about these. I mean, I remember a friend that I had, his brother came back, and he was just like, now again, that gets back maybe to the drug usage. Maybe this guy ruined his brain on drugs, who knows? But you never knew. Now starting to talk to some of you guys, it's interesting because, I've heard that a lot of them didn't get the help that they needed. They went right back into society and weren't debriefed, weren't rehabilitated, and that's why there's a lot of people that are having problems today.
I think so too. I think a lot of them, like I said, whether it was drug use or not, I can't blame it on something like that. But some of them seen things that I probably never seen. I can't say that they seen any more mutilated bodies than I ever seen, but maybe they were part of that. Maybe they were the one that killed these people that they were looking at, and they couldn't deal with it. I think the thing that helped me was I did get out of the service, but I was out for 18 months. I went back in, and maybe being back in the service helped me deal with it because I was around military people. Okay, maybe that helped me. But a lot of people devoted from over there came back to the United States, and if they had less than 6 months to go, then they would let them out early. And maybe that was part of it, just saying, okay, you're free to go, do whatever you want to do. And it could be life just didn't mean much to them or anybody's life because life was cheap there. So many people dying both sides, and death was a normal thing to them. And maybe they just couldn't deal with it because of that.
How did Vietnam change your life and maybe help to where you are today, or the military? Did it help you in your life?
Yes, it taught me a lot, and it made me grow up fast. I told my kids, and I told kids that I taught in Sunday school classes that I think that all kids, males, females, whoever wants to join, it's an experience to never forget, because they meet people from all over the world, not just in the United States and different parts of the United States, but they meet people from all over the world. I was over there with people from Mexico and Canada. People ones that, you know, they weren't, shouldn't have been there, but they were. And you get to know all these people, and it teaches you discipline. You discipline your body, you discipline your mind, and there's nothing like it to me. You know, they keep you physically fit, and it's something that, you know, you grow up, and it's like, okay, it's up to you. You know, it's just like your parents raising you. It says, okay, you know, you do this, this is wrong, this is right. And like I said, the military say, okay, we'll take care of you, and we'll keep you physically fit. You give us 2 or 3 years, and we'll keep you physically fit, feed you, and teach you anything you want to know. And that's why I told my kids, I said, if you ever had to go, I said, you're going to learn something from it. There's not a downside to it, to me.
Being a Vietnam veteran, David, and an American citizen, what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom means to me that I have the right to do what I want to do, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else, whether verbally or physically. Not break any laws, but I can go anywhere in the United States I want to go, or anywhere in the world if I want to get a passport. I can go to any church I want to go to. I can, I'm free to speak. I'll give my opinion about anything our government does without retaliation. There is no country in this world like that. And like I said, you know, we're free to raise our kids how we want to, and teach them. Some countries that you can't teach them about God. You can't teach them except for what they want them to learn. No, there's no place in the world I'd rather be than here.
What about the price of freedom? What's the price of freedom?
Freedom sometimes comes at it's a great price, when it costs, whether the cost is millions of lives or one life. It's each life is significant. But there was people that gave their life to give us the freedom that we have now. And if it ever comes to the point where people don't want to serve in the military, you know, it's like, how long can we keep our freedom in? So someone's got to step up and reserve that right that we have. Otherwise, you know, we're going to fall to another country, I would say.
What does the American flag mean and represent to you?
Oh, it represents, well, like I said, it represents freedom. It represents God and country. I almost cry every time I hear someone sing the national anthem. You know, it's like when you see people dying and the flag is waving over their heads, it makes a lot of difference. When you hear about people dying in combat, you know, it's something sad, but you also know that that person there, we have an all volunteer army, and everybody volunteered to be where they're at. They volunteered to be in the service. And they know that war is an option that they may have to go into one of these days. But I think each and every one of them that die under the American flag realized that that could be a possibility in their life.
Are you when I say religious, I don't mean that in a bad way, but are you a praying person? You believe in God? I mean, did that get you through Vietnam too? Did that help at all to get you through the tough times?
Well, I believe in God. I've always believed in God. But I wasn't saved until I was 43 years old. But when I was in Vietnam, I didn't believe in God. I would say that I had a range of emotions about God. Sometimes I would say, well, why did that happen, God? Or why did this person die and this one didn't? Or, it's questions we all ask. But when I was there, it was like I believed in God, but I didn't believe God. But I would say that the reason I'm here, not only because of maybe my ability to keep myself alive or someone else's ability to help me stay alive, but I would say it was based on prayers of my family.
Great. I'm going to ask you to do one more thing that I ask all the veterans to do. I'm going to ask you to give me a salute into the camera when I tell you. Is that okay from where you're seated?
Okay.
Okay, sir. Right into the camera.